what you gonna do tonight? I've got my mama's car keys and you've got a ticket to ride.
Hello, and welcome to Your Favorite Flick, a podcast where each episode we celebrate a movie that my guest loves. We aren't here to be critics, we're here to be fans. I'm joined today by director, writer, actor Graham Skipper, an old friend, to talk about his favorite movie, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This movie is aggressive, weird, and entertaining as hell, and Graham is a font of knowledge on every element of it. For those of you who like learning about what makes a great movie tick the particular way it does, Graham is your man. As of when we recorded this a few weeks back, Graham had just wrapped shooting on his latest movie, Organonym. I'll let you know details on that one as it heads towards release. Enjoy this ride into the hot Texas summer with us. Chances are you won't survive. Graham Skipper, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Finally.
All right. Graham, you were one of the first people I asked, but you have an actual career in the arts. So apparently you needed to go off and make a movie or something. You want to tell us a little about that?
Yeah, I was up some bullshit. I'm in post right now on my new feature. It's called Organonym, and it's a horror comedy. It's really awesome. I'm very, very excited about it. And we're in post on it right now, but I can't wait to unveil it to the world when that time arises.
So I have to say, I have people on every week talking about a movie they love. I don't think I have had anyone yet who is an acknowledged expert on that movie and on the series in the way that you are on Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So, Graham, I'd love to hear, when did you discover this movie and why does it play such an important role, I think, in your life and career, it's fair to say?
This is my favorite movie. I first discovered it. I was in middle school, probably 7th or 8th grade, and I had just really gotten really into horror. I'd always really been into horror iconography. I loved the idea of Dracula and Frankenstein and the Mummy and all that stuff, but I was too scared to watch any of the movies. And then eventually I watched The Exorcist. It was kind of my first
Okay.
horror movie to watch, which totally fucked me up. I was like 10 or 11. But after that, I was really obsessed with horror films. I loved dissecting why they affected me the way that they did. I loved dissecting how they were able to accomplish these things that other types of movies just weren't. I could have fun seeing an action film, or I could laugh at a comedy, but something about horror got at me in a way that these other movies didn't. And so I went to my local video store, and I remember I asked the clerk there, basically, I want a primer on all the great horror icons. You know, Jason and Freddy were the two that I knew. So anyway, he basically recommended some other entries in different franchises, and one of them, of course, was the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And I remember about this movie, the first time I saw it, I was struck by how against the form it went, because at that point I was used to the Friday the 13th movies, I was used to a Nightmare on Elm Street movies, I was used to the language of slasher films, which can be formulaic by design. And I was expecting the Texas Chainsaw Massacre to be that, but it wasn't at all. Even though it's the progenitor of the slasher film, it didn't stick with that formula. Instead, this was a more aggressive kind of movie. This almost felt like a documentary. It was this like outsider art. And it just hit me in a really different way. And throughout the years, I've come to admire more and more the artistry behind it and just the ethos, the filmmaking behind it. That wasn't, they didn't know, they didn't think this thing was going to be big. They didn't know even how to really break into the industry. They were just a bunch of filmmakers that put some money together and decided to make something completely outside of the studio system. And it was the quality of the product that ended up getting the attention of people in Hollywood. And it broke a lot of molds. And so I've really come to admire it and admire the history of it. And it's one of the few movies, I'm a pretty seasoned horror veteran at this point. Very few movies really unsettle me. But I mean, I've seen this movie probably 1,000 times, and every single time it still unsettles me. It still intrigues me. There's still new stuff that I discover. It's a really magical film. It's a masterpiece.
Oh, it is certainly that. I will tell you now, I am much like you were in middle school. I am still something of a wimp about horror, and I've been trying in the last few years to get more into it. I will admit that this is a movie for me. I absolutely love it, but I almost intentionally have to watch it with some remove, like thinking about the craft of it, because you hit on two things about it that I think are hard to coexist, but in this movie are incredibly intertwined is the outsider art perspective, which it definitely is, but that it's also kind of verite. And that's really hard things to meet. Let's get into talking production a little bit because I have a feeling you have some insight as to how they achieved some of that, both philosophically and practically.
Yeah. So Toby Hooper, he was a UT film student, a recent graduate.
Have we told people that you're a Texas guy? Because I feel that
Oh, I
that's
don't know. Yeah, born in Fort Worth, Texas, and I currently live in Austin, very close to where they filmed this. Actually, they filmed this whole movie in and around Austin. And yeah, he was a UT film student, and he basically got a bunch of other film people together, as well as some local actors and some other people that he just knew, people from the local like dinner theater scene, to put this movie together. Didn't have much money. He used the edit bay at UT, like on weekends and stuff, to edit this thing. This was a true bootstrap kind of production. They were extremely hands on when they were trying to gather bones for decorating the house for the set design. They would just pick up roadkill and boil it. They reached out to some, gosh, I want to say like some veterinarians and got, I mean, it like some really, it was rough. And the house that they filmed in, we're talking the 70s in Texas, right? Like out in the country. I mean, there's no niceties, there's no air conditioning, there's no trailers or any of that stuff. Famously, the final day of shooting was something like a 28-hour day, and it was that day in the house, the dinner scene at the end. And the reason they did it all in one big shoot is because the actor that was playing Grandpa, who was like a 19-year-old kid at the time, he got put into all the makeup and he decided he didn't want to sit through that again. And so they better shoot him out. So they had to
Wow.
basically condense like several days of shooting into just one long marathon, which meant that they were shooting during the day, even though it was supposed to be night. So they had to cover all the windows. It made it extremely hot. I mean, they shot this in the middle of the summer. There's a fantastic book that Gunnar Hansen, who plays Leatherface, wrote called Chainsaw Confidential that details the making of the movie, and it's really incredible. And he talks about how they basically went nuts by the end. I mean, the end of like a 27-hour day, and especially for Gunnar Hansen, he's wearing this horrible, stinky, actual leather mask that was never washed because they didn't want to fuck it up. He went nuts. They all went nuts. And you can see that on screen. You talk about cinema verite, and it's this really cool blend for me of not only was that intentional, that he wanted to make it seem real and like this could actually be happening, but it also was really happening. Like it really was. So it's kind of amazing in that way. But yeah, the shoot was notoriously rough, and that book is really pretty incredible. I highly recommend it.
Okay, I'm gonna have to check that out. I've read some of his comments. I read him say, for instance, that nobody else on set wanted to hang out with him because of the smell of that mask just
Yeah.
getting all over him during production.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, and the actor that played Franklin, I mean, he specifically wanted, he was a method actor, and he specifically wanted to be so annoying that nobody wanted to hang out with him. And it worked. Nobody did.
That for me, and for anybody who hasn't watched it, Franklin, I think fair to say one of the two central characters of the protagonists. That for me is the standout performance. That he is annoying. He's also curious and he's scared, but doesn't want to show he's scared. And not just his performance, but how do you get performances that good on that much of a shoestring?
Well, I mean, I think that talent doesn't necessarily equal people that are already famous or getting paid a bunch of money. Like,
Fair
this
point.
is, he found these local actors that were good, but they also like weren't part of the Hollywood system, which I think is a part of the strengths of this. You didn't have actors that were doing an actory thing. You had actors that were doing their own thing. So all these characters feel so unique. That's why they feel so lived. These aren't like when you see a whole bunch of movies, like let's take the Friday the 13th series, for example, right? That's a film series that is made completely within the Hollywood system. And I love the Friday the 13th series. But you can tell that these are actors that their casting director or that their agent got them, for the most part, so not everybody, but that they got auditions in LA and they went and auditioned for this thing and they got the role. This movie feels like these people, like, walked in off the street, and they're all kinda weird. They're all kinda different. They're all so unique. Even Marilyn Burns, who is the lead of this movie, she's not your typical sort of ingenue. She's not, especially at the time, she's not the type of person or the type of character that you were gonna see being the sole survivor of a movie like this. Because she's rough around the edges and she doesn't know what to do. She's guttural and ugly by the end. I mean, she's a beautiful woman, but she's like drenched in blood and screaming and sweaty, and that's just not something that you saw at the time.
To your point of the non-Hollywood aspect of it, she does not look like a beautiful woman who's been drenched in blood at that point. She looks wretched, and I say that not in the judgmental of her
Yeah.
appearance way, obviously, but she looks like she's been through this experience.
Yeah, and I feel like that's part of the flavor of this movie and part of the reason why it really works so well with you talk about on a shoestring is that they had to do all this stuff within their means and they had to do it without having the experience of learning quote how to do it. Obviously, like they were film students, they were film people, they knew craft, obviously, but they were still outsider enough to just do whatever they felt was gonna be the most effective, and I think a lot of filmmakers sort of have that trained out of them. They wanna push boundaries, but not the wrong boundaries, and Hooper and this whole cast and crew, they didn't give a fuck. They wanted to push boundaries, and then they did it, and I think that that's why it's lasted in the way that it has. I really think that's a big reason why.
And so much great stuff to unpack in there, Graham. An interesting thing I should say about the performances, at least for me, I don't think this is uncommon, is on first seeing this, I probably would have said, "Oh, that's not great acting." I don't know that I would have said bad, but I think I might have said not great. And then after several viewings of this over the years, and I did, despite being a horror wimp, I did first see this as a teenager. It was kind of a de rigueur movie for any aspiring film fan. I think I might have said at the time, like, "Oh, that's not great acting." And then at some point I realized it's because it doesn't feel like acting. And I would extend that to the production of the movie in general. Like, a lot of the brilliance here for me is that it doesn't feel like a movie in the way that I typically think of that. I think to extend on what you're saying and on the quote from the filmmaker, it is a movie where as I watch it even now, I constantly have this feeling of, "Oh, I might see something I can never unsee here." And
Mhm.
I don't know that in a literal visual sense that quite happens, and this is something we can get into because there's brilliant use of what is on camera and what is just off camera.
Yeah.
Um, but I feel like in watching it, "Oh, I'm about to see a person get murdered for real." Even seeing it a bunch of times, it's that disquieting effect.
Yeah, yeah, that's one of the strongest things about this movie. This movie is largely bloodless, and people don't believe that. It's honestly part of the reason why I love singing its praises so much is because there's so many people that because of the title and because of the subject matter, they think they know what this movie is. And they think, man, I don't love gory stuff, so I'm not gonna like it. This movie's not gory. This movie barely has any blood in it, but Toby Hooper is brilliant in how he makes us think that we see it. You know, he shows us a bucket, he shows us a hook, and then he shows us a person that clearly has been hung on the hook, and we put two and two together. I mean, there are people who have said, "Oh no, I remember seeing blood go in the bucket," but you never do. And that's
Oh,
why like that's why it's just amazing is because he's making our minds put all this stuff together, which is even more horrible and dramatic than it would be if he tried to put it on screen.
Graham, I thought last week watching it that I was gonna see blood going into that bucket below her, and I had watched it as recently as, like, October.
Yeah.
So, it is amazing the effect that can have even after repeated viewings.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about that pathway of how it ended up in major cinemas? Why this didn't either disappear or just relegated to the drive-in world?
Well, speaking of The Exorcist, it was all thanks to William Friedkin. Uh, Somehow, a copy of the film came into the possession of William Friedkin. He saw it and he immediately called up Toby Hooper and he said, "Come out to LA. I'm going to introduce you to everybody." And it was Friedkin that just, he's one of the top directors in Hollywood. And so he basically took Hooper under his wing and he said, "This guy's the real deal." And he got the movie put out. He got Hooper into the studio system and got him making films. But it's all thanks to Friedkin, to my knowledge.
I did not know Friedkin had that hand in it. And so that put it in the hands of distributors at a time that distributors were independent enough that they could make this choice, I guess.
Well, yeah, and again, it was Friedkin, right? It's similar to how like Hellraiser became a thing. Hellraiser became a thing because Stephen King put a quote on it. Stephen King said, "I've seen the new face of horror, and his name is Clive Barker." And then boom, there you go, it's put out. So when Friedkin says it, then yeah, sure, everybody was biting to get at it. And of course, when you have somebody that takes a chance on a movie like this, and it comes out and I mean, obviously, a lot of controversy. People thought it was real. It was a scare. It was a big fucking moment in cinemas, and that's why it lasted. And yeah, I think it just takes one person. It just takes one person with power like that to put their weight behind it, and then it's amazing how all of a sudden the system will follow.
So, going back to production itself to a degree, or at least inspirations, I'm always amazed with a movie that you've used the word unique several times, and I think you're right on. What do you know about where this drew from? You mentioned the horror scene at the time, but very different stuff. This seems to have come out of the ether to a degree, to my mind. Where were they looking, or were they? Divot.
I believe, and I should be more knowledgeable about this, but I believe that basically he was reading about Ed Gein, the serial killer Ed Gein, and he was a big fan of horror movies. And I think that he knew that Psycho was also based on the serial killer Ed Gein. In fact, something in my brain matter is telling me that he saw Psycho, read about Ed Gein from there, and then said, "Oh wow, this guy's fascinating. I want to make this movie." And I think it was also like it's just what he had access to. He had access to a whole bunch of farmland, not that he owned, but like he knew he could just drive out and talk to people that owned houses out in the country. It truly was this independent film ethos that wasn't as prevalent at the time, but that regional filmmakers were uh regional filmmakers were having to use just to get their movies made. You think of George A. Romero, you think of John Waters, these other regional filmmakers that were making movies with what they had access to. And I think that that was really what the case was with this, is that what cameras do we have? What talent do we have? What locations can we get? And then what's the inspiration? Ed Gein. Okay, cool. We're gonna write this little story around it. And again, when you think of like B drive-in movies at the time, you think of like Night of the Living Dead. It's a pretty simple story, right? It's these ghouls come back to life and they eat people. But it's the artistry in the making of it that makes it stand out. And it's the same with this. Also, this is a period of time with a lot of youth rebellion happening. So, anti establishment, this is the realm of the Vietnam War, where you have youth population in America that was fed up with how the system was doing things. They were angry. They wanted to be loud. They wanted to scream. Toby Hooper was for sure a hippie, unabashed hippie. He was extremely anti-authoritarian. And so I think that kind of a primal scream, it's what came out. This is what came out. Oh, and it came out in different ways for different filmmakers, George A. Romero being a great example, Martin Scorsese being a great example. These filmmakers that they knew they had to make something. They knew they had to stand out. They knew that they had to make their voices heard. And when a studio system is so big and already so loud, you have to be louder. And so I think that that's the position that Hooper was coming from. He wanted to or ruffle feathers. He wanted to rile people up. He wanted to slam them in the face with something. And so subtlety is just not going to play if that's your goal.
This is very general, but did they realize they had made something special and had something truly different on their hands? Or was this more just, at least initially, hey, we hope to get in drive-ins and get a little regional play?
Yeah, I think that they were aiming to make an art film, but they didn't have any kind of a thought that they would ever be anything more than like maybe they'd play some regional drive-ins and maybe make their money back. They were trying to make the movie that they wanted to make, and they did, but they didn't
Oh
have it.
yeah, you don't do this accidentally. You don't
Yeah,
achieve this without the effort. But I just was interested,
yeah,
on their
no.
aspirations
As
even.
as far as I know, they just didn't think that this would ever go any further than the regional circuit.
Why don't we get into the text of the film itself a little bit more? I'm going to throw this your way and say I won't ask what your favorite sequence is, Graham, because that may be unfair. But why don't you pick a sequence for us and kind of walk us through what makes it great?
Well, I mean, let's talk about the ending sequence. The whole finale of this movie is an incredible, just total tour de force maelstrom of chaos that is like so beautifully and elegantly put together, but it's so visceral and violent and awful. It's one of the most affecting moments of cinema of all time for me. Um,
Now, are we talking the dinner
the dinner,
and
we're
what
talking
comes after?
the dinner through
Okay.
when she through the very, very end of the movie. So if we take it from like when she wakes up, right? She's been knocked out by the gas station attendant and she wakes up, she's tied to the chair. She looks and sees the family sitting around the table and she screams and they scream back at her. It's a very funny moment, right? It's really funny. And that's the thing that people forget about this movie is that it was funny and Hooper was intending that. He was making a comedy.
Especially that final sequence, and part of what's not that there aren't funny moments earlier, but part of what's interesting to me is kind of a hard turn into humor. Like it's not all laughs, obviously, but like to pick up the humor in kind of the final act to that degree, I think it's an extremely bold choice.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. It's a wild tonal swing, and I'm absolutely here for it. But she wakes up, she screams at them, they scream at her, and then she learns that Grandpa, who's ostensibly dead at the end of the table, he's a corpse, and that she's already seen up in the corpse room upstairs. That he's the best that ever was, and he's the one that's going to kill her. What an honor! They cut her finger, and it's revealed that Grandpa's alive. Now, this is like a really interesting part of the movie for me because you could take it in a couple ways, right? You could take it as Grandpa's just a really old man. He looked dead. Oh, blood woke him up. He's barely alive. But and this is in keeping with what Hooper said about the movie and what was intended. This whole movie, they're talking about like the Zodiac. They're talking about dark forces. They're talking about fate. The hitchhiker does that mark on the side of the van. Hooper's intention was that that was all real shit. There's some weird magic stuff going on here. And so the other take on Grandpa is that Grandpa's essentially a fucking vampire. He's some kind of an ancient, he's kept alive through the evil magic of cannibalism, and it's not defined and it doesn't need to be. But this is where this movie really, it was already horrible, but then it really slips into we are fully in nightmare mode now. And that's accentuated by all these close ups of her eyeball, the super aggressive, super tight shots with a macro lens on her face. This is not stuff that you're going to see in a studio picture. This is a sweaty dude with a camera sticking his camera like inches away from his actress who's fucking exhausted. That's the only way that you're going to get those shots. And it's a full descent.
It's something that like a professional film actress might almost not tolerate,
Yeah, yeah,
in a way that
it is truly aggressive filmmaking, both on the performers and on the audience. And the thing about it is that this is where we literally descend into hell. This is where it's this really incredible, almost magical realism kind of thing going on at the end. where we are through cinema fully descending into a hellish abyss. It's an actual literal nightmare. And we're right there with her. We're so close. These shots are so close to her eye. We're seeing the family from her POV. We are her. We're there in the room. You can feel it. You can smell it.
The shots from her POV specifically, the it happens a few times that she says something and it makes them laugh are
Yeah.
just
Oh, it's
simultaneously funny and the most terrifying thing you've ever seen.
oh yeah, it's just horrible. It's horrible because immediately we're putting ourselves in her shoes and we're already there, right? Like from when Leatherface, the way that they shoot Leatherface, and periodically we get into Leatherface's inner life a little bit, which I want to talk about because I find that really fascinating too. But really, when Leatherface appears to these kids, and especially to Sally at the end when he's just chasing her for like 20 minutes, we're exhausted too, right? And we're going, this is actually how I would react if I were in this situation. Because all you can fucking do is run. That's all you can do. And when he keeps running, all you can do is keep running. But there's no superpower that we have. There's no cool, like, I don't know, Deus Ex Machina that's gonna save you. You just gotta fucking run away from this guy and hope that you're gonna survive.
There's no clever plan, as I think we see in a lot of later slasher movies, of the final girl traps the villain or tricks him somehow. It's like you said, it's just running for your life in the most literal way.
There's also no hope here. Like all of her friends are and family are dead. Everybody's dead. So this movie just escalates and escalates until eventually she breaks out of the window. It's daylight all of a sudden. Daylight when you're supposed to be safe and she is still not safe. In fact, she's so unsafe that the hitchhiker, he's just toying with her. He could run and catch up with her, but he's not. He's just fucking cutting her. He's being a piece of shit. And there's Leatherface. He's coming after her again. It doesn't end. Yes, we have the Black Maria. We have the big semi that shows up. But even with that, and this is the one, the only part of the movie that ever takes me out of the movie is why they don't just drive away in the semi.
Yeah. Why she gets out and then he follows is
It's
baffling.
well, I mean, it's baffling, but whatever. But even with that, like he leaves, he runs away. She's still left alone. And at the end of the day, even though she survives, she's obviously broken. Like that woman is never going to be okay. And we're never going to be okay. And Leatherface is still fucking out there. And he's pissed off and he's dancing with his chainsaw. The final moment of that movie, but the final moment of that movie, when he's swinging that chainsaw around, right? And Daniel Pearl, the cinematographer, when they were shooting this, he was so close to him that Gunnar Hansen's swinging this chainsaw, and he's told just to swing it wildly and dance around. And Daniel Pearl was told, get as close as you can, dodge the chainsaw. The chainsaw did not have the chains removed because it was so close, you could tell that the chains weren't on it. So they kept the chains on it. That was a working chainsaw with fucking blades. Daniel Pearl almost got decapitated getting that shot. And you feel it when you're watching it. It's so close, it's so violent, it's so aggressive, and then it cuts to silence. That silence is deafening. There is no resolution. It's like ending a song without resolving the note. It's so unsettling and it leaves you shaken. When you're done, it's like, wait, what? It's very troubling way to end a film. And that's why when you walk away from it, you feel ugly. You feel awful. You want to take a shower.
It's not for me, and I agree 150% with everything you just said. It's not just that he dances, it is specifically that he pirouettes that gets me.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
It just is, in its way, sort of this beautiful, what we think of as a more feminine movement. And
Sure.
here he is doing it with a chainsaw.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Oh, sure. Yeah. Leatherface. I mean, this is a great, speaking of pirouette and like feminine movements and stuff, I think this is a great segue to talk about Leatherface a little bit because Leatherface.
Hey, that's what I was about to do. I'm in charge of the segues
Oh,
here,
right,
Graham.
right,
Go
right.
on.
Yes. Yes. No, but
Yeah, roll.
so Leatherface is the protagonist of this movie, right? Sally's our final girl. Sally's the progenitor of the final girl. She's the first final girl. But Leatherface is the protagonist. Leatherface is fascinating. Leatherface dresses in women's clothing. Leatherface also dresses in men's clothing. Leatherface obviously wears a mask.
By the way, one of my favorite things about Leatherface, the man dresses for dinner.
He-
You know, he puts on a
Yes!
suit, he dresses for dinner.
He dresses for dinner. He has multiple masks with different looks. And what's interesting about this, there's a difference, I think, between the way that Leatherface is portrayed as I'm gonna say it as a queer character, and hear me out on this, versus Buffalo Bill in Silence of the Lambs, where Buffalo Bill's queerness is essentially made out to be the reason why he's a killer, right? He is evil because of his queerness. With Leatherface, what I love about it so much is that Leatherface is undeniably queer, right? And maybe at the time they didn't have the proper language for it, but Leatherface is not evil because he's queer. Nothing Leatherface does is really exhibited as being evil. Leatherface doesn't go seek these kids out. These kids intrude on Leatherface's world. That first moment where Leatherface is sitting in the living room and he's just killed two kids that have wandered into his house. And he's looking out the window going, what the fuck? Where are all these kids coming from? Now, yes, does his family eat people? Do they keep grandma's corpse in the attic? Yeah. But Leatherface isn't going out of his way to go and kill these kids. These kids are invading on Leatherface's space. Leatherface is just being Leatherface, right? And Leatherface's family is completely in sync with letting Leatherface be who he wants. A lesser film would have had a gas station attendant make fun of Leatherface for wearing a dress. Yes, he didn't give a fuck about Leatherface wearing a dress. The gas station attendant is there with his family. Now he's pissed off about the door, right? But it's not a commentary on Leatherface being an outsider, being transgressive, going against the norm. And I just find that so fascinating. Leatherface just sort of is, and he honestly reminds me a lot of like when you talk about a lot of the ethos of like Lovecraftian monsters, right? That are just, they sort of exist. They're not evil, they just exist. And it's humans that kind of meddle in their affairs, and humans get fucked up because humans make bad choices. And to me, that's how I've always read this movie. The humans are making bad choices, or the kids, the people, the quote unquote regular people. And here you have the family that, yeah, they're sure. But does the gas station attendant kidnap Sally and take her to be eaten? Yeah, but there's a part of him that feels bad about it. And then I've talked about Leatherface. You have the hitchhiker, and the hitchhiker, he was just getting a ride, and he wanted to sell a photograph, and those kids kicked him out of their fucking van. Now did he cut Franklin? Yeah, but it's muddy, is what I'm saying. And I think that muddiness of the evil of the film is really one of its strengths. And regarding Leatherface, and again, Leatherface's queerness, look, I am not a queer person. I cannot speak to the LGBTQ experience from a personal standpoint, but as a cinema goer and as someone who really deeply loves this movie and deeply loves the portrayal of Leatherface, I do think that his queer coding is more a symbol of outsiders proclaiming that being outside the norm is fine. That they, in a way, look, they outsiders can be evil too, but it's not because they're outsiders. Like, if that makes sense. I think that was pretty progressive for its time. And I really, every time I watch this movie, more and more with every single passing year, I feel more and more sad for Leatherface, because Leatherface, he's not very bright. He wants to please his family. He wants to make grandpa proud. These kids come and invade. He takes advantage of a situation. And at the end of the day, his family's going to be mad at him because he let this one get away. And that's sad. That's unfortunate for Leatherface. That's my reading of the movie.
And I think this goes back to the verite nature of this, that the camera and the production are not here to judge, they're here to record.
Mhm.
And of course, with
Yeah.
of course, they have decided what's happening in front of it, but I think we're very intentionally led to believe, and most importantly, to feel that this is recording an event.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Even from the beginning, we start with a news report, right? Well, really, we start with a piece of information, a piece of writing telling us that this is real. Obviously, it's not, but you know, look, there was no internet back in '73. You don't know. This could happen. And then the movie supports that. It supports the wonderment of, gosh, is this real? This sure feels real. And even though I know this is a movie, and even though I know that this is a film that has like been released in a movie theater, that one little part of you that keeps questioning it, that's the part that lives on.
What lessons from this movie carry on throughout the genre? And are there positive and negative lessons that filmmakers have taken from this movie?
Uh, Good question. As with any movie that changes the landscape of films, and particularly the horror genre, I think that studios largely take the wrong message from these movies. The wrong message being things like, "Oh, we have to have a final girl," or "Oh, you have to have a body count, and they have to be young kids that are on a road trip," or whatever, or that Hicks are scary. That's one thing from this, right? That Hicks are scary. The point is not that they're Hicks. The point is all the things we've just been talking about. But
Yeah, but between this and Deliverance, I think there's a real argument that those two '70s movies
Mhm.
color the relationship of us urban folk and, what we think of country people to this day.
Absolutely. But I think that really it wasn't until Halloween in '78 that the slasher genre got like solidified. Now Halloween absolutely built upon Texas Chainsaw. But Texas Chainsaw remained an outlier. It's very much a bridge movie between the prestige horror and like the true indie stuff of like early Scorsese and stuff like that. That you have Texas Chainsaw, which sits in this cool like middle ground. Halloween, again, an independent film, but Carpenter's style is very different from Hooper's. Carpenter's extremely controlled, extremely analytical, a very cold filmmaker, but everything's very precise. Hooper's the opposite, right? Hooper's extremely unprecise. And so when you have Halloween come out several years later, and it so easily is a formula, it's very, very clear what the formula is going to be. That's a lot easier to copycat. But Halloween built upon the groundwork that Texas Chainsaw laid. Now, I love slasher movies, right? So it's not all bad. I think that positive things that filmmakers took away from this was a push towards cinema verite, a push towards anti-heroes, push towards like non-resolved endings. I don't think that there's a Taxi Driver without Texas Chainsaw, you know?
Oh, interesting.
Like Taxi Driver, De Niro's not a hero in that, right? He's the definition of the anti-hero. And there's not really a resolved ending to that movie. You don't feel good at the end of that movie. People aren't happy at the end of that movie. And I think Texas Chainsaw really.
You also aren't 100% sure how much the end of the movie is reality in
Well,
Taxi
right.
Driver, which adds to that,
Totally.
ambiguous nature.
Absolutely. But like Chainsaw, for me, it really laid the groundwork for all that stuff. And it did that because people didn't think that you could. And obviously, this is not the only movie to do this sort of stuff, but it was such a monumental shift in how things went that obviously people are going to try to copy it. And people are going to try to tap into that danger as much as possible, but they're not always gonna totally hit. But yeah, it's a pretty incredible movie, and it really was seismic.
It strikes me that so often the lesson we'd like studios or production companies to learn is do something boldly independent like they did. And instead, what they learn is, oh, let's ape what they did. And that's very natural and very human when you're the one putting in the money, but it still is frustrating as a fan.
Sure.
Graham, we've got a lot of great stuff here. anything else on your mind about Texas Chainsaw that you're like, oh, we have to cover this to be fair to this movie?
I really encourage people. I know we've talked a lot about the aggressiveness of this movie, and it is aggressive, but the highest compliment I can give it is that this truly is an art film. It's an uncomfortable art film, and it's not an art film you're going to sit back like you're watching Godard or Fellini. You're going to watch this and you're going to be cringing and shivering and very, very tense. But that doesn't mean it's any less effective. And that doesn't mean it's any less artistically worthy. So I really encourage people, especially if you haven't seen this movie, or if the only time you've seen this when you were like in middle school or high school, give it another shot. Watch it like an art film. And I think it'll open a lot of people's eyes. I hope so, at least.
The one thing I might pin onto that is an art film, but also a very accessible art film. Like don't let the on the other end of the spectrum, don't let the term art film scare you off either.
Yeah.
It's a movie,
Yeah.
it's a
Absolutely.
very watchable movie too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So the way we like to end this show is to give some recommendations to our audience. So for people who watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre, whether they're watching it for the first time or the 100th time, what are some movies that you think they might like? And look, not that it has to be, but just knowing your level of knowledge in this area, if there are things off the beaten path that you might recommend in particular.
Oh, I got you. I got you, boo. I have some deep cuts here, some relative deep
Good.
cuts. I got 5 movies that I want to briefly
Ooh.
touch on. These are all really excellent. They're all masterpieces. I'll go through them kind of quickly. First is I've been on a big Japanese film kick, and I'm a big fan of Japanese cinema. So several of these are Japanese, but the first one is called Tetsuo the Iron Man. It's a film from 1989 by director Shinya Tsukamoto, and it is ostensibly about a guy that is like a Japanese salaryman. He's a businessman. He's boring, lives a boring life, and his body starts to transform into this metal machinery, and he becomes like a chaotic metal machine god. It's pure industrial anxiety. It's shot in black and white. This manic, it's total micro budget, very very small budget, but it's shot like super manic. There's a lot of stop motion effects in it. It reminds me of Texas Chainsaw because it's like total sensory overload. The sound design, especially, it's assaulting, it's nonstop, and it's just not polished. If you want to see like a true primal scream on screen, watch Tetsuo the Iron Man. Again, not a comfortable watch, but man, you'll never be the same. Another film from the 80s in Japan, 1982. It's called Burst City by a director Sogo Ishii. It's a punk film, and it's basically about these like punk rock bands that are also gangs fighting in this like post-apocalyptic wasteland. But it's extremely anti-authoritarian, which is a big reason why it reminds me of Texas Chainsaw. It's made by these like young artist collective that are it's like they're making it on pure adrenaline. It's chaotic, it's messy, it's loud, and it just feels dangerous in the same way that Texas Chainsaw does. In America, in the 70s, there was another outsider filmmaker, John Waters, who people may be familiar with. And he has a film called Multiple Maniacs, which is like filthy, transgressive. It's this kind of fascination with like grotesque Americana, which I think is very much in keeping with Chainsaw's whole vibe. Extremely DIY. There is zero studio oversight. It's obvious. And you can feel that it came out of the American underground, right? Just like Chainsaw does. Like you can just feel that. There's another movie that is going to be, when people watch this, and I hope people watch this, it's an absolute masterpiece. But when people watch this, they're going to go, wait, how is this like Chainsaw? But hear me out. Another film from Japan from 1969. It's called Funeral Parade of Roses. And the director is Toshio Matsumoto. And it's a documentary horror film hybrid. And it's all about queer underground culture. It's a very experimental film. It's like socially volatile. It's this portrait of the queer underground community in Japan at a time when it was still very, very transgressive to be queer. Particularly, it follows a trans woman and her sort of attempting to navigate modern life in Tokyo. It feels dangerous. It breaks form, and it was doing a lot of things that traditional films were not doing at the time, even though it was happening in Japan at a time when a lot of experimentation was happening in cinema anyway. And then the last one, if you want to go pure horror, this is a great movie. It's a sort of a proto slasher from Germany. It's called Angst. The director is Gerald Kargel. It's a slasher movie basically told all from the perspective of the killer. The camera is raw, it's unfiltered, it's very, very close. The whole movie, you're sort of like gliding in POV like you are the killer. It's unhinged, right? It's unhinged. You feel like this might be real. It's really aggressive, but you can see its influence in later movies, and you can see like it feels like the dangerous cousin of like the more dangerous cousin of something like Friday the 13th. Again, another first person perspective killer, but Angst just feels so much dirtier, and it bridges that gap with the kind of visceral danger that Chainsaw really talked about. So those five are Tetsuo the Iron Man, Burst City, Multiple Maniacs, Funeral Parade of Roses, and Angst.
I have to admit, Multiple Maniacs is the only one I've seen on that list, so I have some homework to do, but that's great. That's what I
You,
love.
dude, you're gonna love these films, especially honestly, like as you're getting into like Japanese cinema. Which, if I ever get to come back on the program, there's a lot of amazing like Japanese films from the '60s and '70s and '80s that are truly transgressive stuff. That over here, like we just traditionally haven't paid a lot of attention to them. And so as you sort of get into these, I think that you're going to enjoy them. And I think that you'll find yourself on a nice little rabbit hole going down that route, that particular route of cinema.
And Cram, you said if you come back, the door is open to you. You tell me what movie you want to talk about when. If it's 2 in the morning, we'll jump on mic and we'll
Oh
talk
man,
movies.
I'm gonna make you watch some weird shit.
I love it. I need that person. We get look and God love them, but a lot of my friends, of course, kind of '80s classics. We have probably overrepresented on the show, so it's good to get a mix in here and get some challenging stuff for me and the audience.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure.
Well, Graham, thank you so much for doing this. I had a blast. I hope you did.
I absolutely did. I love talking about this movie. I love evangelizing it. And I just love talking about movies. And it's good to talk to you again, too. It's been too long.
It has been. Thank you so much, man.
Thanks, brother.
That's it for this one, folks. I'm Brad Glazer. I host, produce, and edit the show. Thanks go out to Chris Bravender, Brad Kaufman, and Jeff Glazer. Julia Mott is forever my final girl. The music you hear at the beginning of the show and now is by my friend Richard Bates and his band, The Huns. That's H-O-N-S. You can find The Huns music on Bandcamp. We spent a couple of shows in the world of horror, so I thought we'd lighten things up a bit on Wednesday. Jeff Elizardi joins us again, this time to talk Forgetting Sarah Marshall, something of a breakup, new beginnings romp set in an earthly paradise. Please follow, rate, review, subscribe, tell all your friends. You know, all the things. Those reviews in particular, no matter how long or short, really help us reach more people. You can follow us on Instagram at Your Favorite Flick, on Letterboxd at Favorite Flick, or shoot us an email at yourfavoriteflick@gmail.com. Huns, take us out.
Same days brushing up on poetics. That's 14 times 365 inflection.